We do a lot of shows. Actually, we do a podcast that we license back to Clear Channel.
Yeah, they hired us back afterwards.
Well, they license our content now to play on the night. So we have a podcast that's technically the night show on Real Radio, but our main Friday show at a mediocre time, that's where it started. That is our flagship show, and then
we're on
we
Twitch
have a relationship with all the with the Improv, so we get all the comedians.
Oh, okay.
Then this is a separate show, so this will go out immediately, but our listeners know on Fridays we always interview the comedians.
All right, cool.
Hey, Twitch, what's going on, y'all?
And
Welcome.
then we have a Twitch component now that we started a year ago.
Would you like to start?
Sure.
Here we go. 3, 2.
Man, I guess we should have been recording before the
Well, there's
interview.
certain things I said that I wouldn't have wanted recorded.
Yeah.
I went full
I couldn't wait for Jim to get
little
here
guy
because
freak out.
I knew he knew all about radio, and I love talking to radio guys because it's all the same everywhere. I hear Corolla talk about terrestrial radio days, and anytime I hear people talk terrestrial radio, especially if they're out of it now,
It's never good.
Yeah, they're always
never. I love not being able to say fuck. That was so much fun.
Yeah. And the management was so genius, and they're so revolutionary at the times, and it's never that. Or the company was so, they weren't cheap, and they bought new chairs and had water cups.
They encouraged me to be as funny as I could, and they defended me. What a great deal.
Ladies and gentlemen, he's got 2 shows tonight. He's got 2 shows on Saturday. I don't believe you're doing a Sunday, right?
No, I'm going home.
Okay, good for you. And that's more reason for you to get your tickets now. He'll be at the Improv those particular days. It's Jim Norton.
How you doing?
Well, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
No problem. So I mean, there's a lot. It's funny too because last night, anytime I prepare for an interview, I always reference Wikipedia first just to get a baseline. I'm like, let me remind myself all Jim did.
Wrong. It's always wrong.
It is always.
Yeah, there's never.
But
anything. There's always that one thing in there that we bring up. We're like, oh, so you grew up in Minneapolis, and they're like, no, it never happened. I'm like, fuck.
What I did notice is Jim's Wikipedia is giant and more than most comedians that come through here.
Well, you've been at this since 1990, right?
I have, and my Wikipedia is probably not representative of my fledgling career. It probably looks really impressive, and you see what I'm actually doing. You're like, wow, that was well written.
No, I started thinking, I was like, I wonder if it's because he's a radio guy. A lot of people know a lot of things about talk radio guys because the nature of their job is just to tell a lot about themselves.
A lot of time to fill.
Yeah, there's a lot of
slow news day.
Yeah. And so you talk a lot of personal stuff, and then therefore that fills your Wikipedia or it fills people's minds with stuff with knowledge of Jim Norton.
Well, the first time I met you was at the old Improv that was down on Church Street, right? Wasn't it Church Street?
Yeah.
The wooden one?
Yeah.
I don't know.
The wooden Improv.
Before my time.
Shred, you work for the fucking Improv. Was it the wooden one?
Yeah,
on Church Street, and then it was this Yellow Discipline had come out.
Oh my God, that's 2002.
And you killed it, and you were the only the first comedian that I've met that came out afterwards, stood behind the table, but you were so nice to everybody.
Oh, okay.
And people
thanks,
were just buying CDs like crazy because you were hustling. You were
it
being
was
cool.
Prostituting is the word you're looking for.
Yeah, but it came off really cool and genuine. I'd seen comedians be assholes before. I'd never seen the inverse of that. Like the guy that's like, hey, I'm going to be nice and take photos and sell a shit ton of merch. And I was like, oh, this guy. I was like, I like this. Way better than the diva that goes into the dressing room, just sits there till everybody clears out.
Yeah.
And,
Radio
whatever.
does keep you humble. It's a weird job. Because again, so much of your real life comes out. People feel connected to you.
Yeah.
And it's always on a slow news day. I mean, I didn't want to talk when I was a kid about blowing my friends until there was nothing happening in the news. I'm like, well, time to confess.
Yeah, you're right. It's the ultimate lie detector in the fact that if you spend enough time on the radio, and Daniel did talk radio for 15 years prior to and I started.
I was at that station you were on this morning on Real Radio. I started there as 19.
Wow.
And I'm 41 now, and I'm still on the station.
Yeah. And I did it for 10 years, and eventually you just start telling things, the truth about yourself, and it's weird. It's like it doesn't even you don't even consciously do it. It just happens over enough time. You do 5 hours a day on talk radio. Over enough time, you're like, oh shit, every single one of the listeners know everything about me, and like I'm telling things that I probably shouldn't, and it just happens.
Well, a lie is harder to keep going too. Like if you're telling the truth, it's harder to keep a lie going 5 days a week. You're like hours a day. Oh my god, I got to pretend that I talk like this. What am I doing? Just be yourself. So after a while, you just get beaten into honesty because you feel like it's easier just to be truthful.
Yeah, I do feel bad.
I really thought about that.
And Jim, you probably, since being in radio in the past, you've seen those guys, like the interns that like, you do a funny accent, keep doing that, and then they're forced to do it, and then years go by.
Well, Angel, our buddy Angel, who's on the Monsters that you were on this morning, when he first came to Real Radio, he was on the Phillips File, which is a different show, and he was an intern, and they asked him to pretend like he didn't know how to speak English.
Yeah.
And he would just pepper in small bits of Spanish here and again.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
And
so
when you think about it now, it's kind of fucked up and racist and weird. but that's how we got into the business. And then eventually, and it is weird that nobody ever asked, like, wow, like, listen to you now. You've really come a long way.
You really improved. Good for you.
In like a short amount of time.
I did some show, I want to say it was Texas, where I was promoting, and they didn't really want me on. They were a team would broken up and just got back together.
Yeah.
And the one guy was doing a bunch of voices, like different characters, but he's like, don't acknowledge that they're me. And I'm like, I got to be fucking roped into your lie, you asshole.
Yeah.
I was really resentful of that. I'm like, it's the same guy. I'm supposed to act like it's a whole studio full of people having fun.
Yeah.
Fuck yourself.
Yeah. That's so, Jim. I going back, and you got a lot of really cool stuff going on now. I just want to talk a little bit about
the
radio.
one that I put at the bottom. I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah.
It's like morphing two of my favorite comedians into one.
But going back to like 2000, when you started working with Opie and Anthony, and I saw a thing about you getting arrested with Louis Black in a van. And
a bus.
A bus,
Yes.
Like a see-through. It was the old. We have this big joke about like '90s radio. It's kind of like Howard Stern started in the '90s, and then that kind of like branched off a bunch of like wacky morning shows or like shock jocks and like that. And the Monsters were one of them that we work with, and then like Opie and Anthony and Bubba the Love
Up
Sponge.
the road, Bubba the Love Sponge and Man Cow, and like there's just tons of these guys that were iconic at the time.
And then heritage shows that had a ton of listeners, especially back then. But they did these bits all the time, and they're like '90s radio bits. And
the two big were Howard Stern and O&A. I mean, those were the
the Voyeur bus you're talking about. That wasn't even a bit. The guys that come in to promote this bus full of half-naked girls with giant windows. So Rick, our producer at the time, they said, just go on the bus and just see what's going on. And then me and Louis Black, these two dumb comedians, were like, yeah, we'll go on with the bus. I'll never forget this one girl.
It's a titty bus. Like, why wouldn't you get on it?
Her areolas, I mean, that was 2001. I still think about her areolas 4 times a week. They were big, giant, Hershey Kiss dark areola. They drove me bananas. So me and Louis just went on the bus to report back to. I wasn't even a regular on the show. I was just a regular guest. And after we got arrested and spent the night in jail, then Opie said, "Hey man, you went to jail for the show. You can come in anytime you want."
No shit.
Wow. So that really helped my career.
Really? So that was kind of like the turning point.
What was Louis's take?
Louis and I were both smokers at the time, too. He was freaked out. I'm freaked out because we were both smoky and running out of cigarettes. And I remember I asked one of the sergeants, I'm like, are we going to be in the same cell? And he goes, what do you think? You're going to fucking protect each other in jail? I'm like, we were just kind of curious. But there was like 9 of us that got arrested. They put us all, and they called it the Al Sharpton cell. It was where Al Sharpton would always go whenever he got arrested for some, like, civil discourse.
And you got arrested because the Titty Bus actually...
Yeah, but what's the charge?
Accidentally went into the area that they blocked off for the president up there.
Yeah, we're getting to that. Yeah.
Clinton's parade route.
For Clinton, yeah.
Yeah, well, there was a bunch. CNN got on the bus, and when they were on the bus, boy, they ratted right to the mayor's office. It was Giuliani, and he commented on it. And by the time we went up 6th Avenue, I had a gig that night in South Jersey. So we're driving up 6th Avenue, and we see a lot of police cars. And we're like, oh, boy. And they stopped it, and they got on the bus, and like the whole road was blocked. And we saw that there was a lot of cops with white shirts, which is not good because they're like captains, lieutenants. They were not fucking beat cops.
Yeah.
We had a police escort at one point, and what happened was it was all over the news. It was live afternoon radio. O&A was afternoons at the time. And they were just embarrassed because the mayor commented we were close to Clinton's parade route. So they wind up arresting all of us. They took us down to the Tombs. And the charge was they couldn't think of what to charge us with because we were just technically on the bus. So they charged us with promoting the lewdness of a body.
What?
It was some bullshit charge. We were there for 27 hours.
My God.
I've never had to shit worse in my life. That was the worst part, was not wanting to shit in jail.
Yeah. Because it's just
is it the big metal toilet?
Steel metal toilet with an open door. But it's a scary place.
I almost bought one of those for my house.
My wife
talked me. Yeah, my wife talked me out of it. You can find them on Amazon, like the new ones.
Oh, a jail toilet.
Yeah, and I was like, how cool would it be to have a fucking jail toilet? She's like, you're an idiot.
Yeah, she was right. She was wise decision. But I wound up getting out. The judge threw it out. He was annoyed at the prosecutor. And I went to Dangerfields that night and did a set. A half hour later, I was on stage. I mean, that was that. But if that had been a Friday afternoon, we would have spent the weekend in jail. And I was a smoker. And that was the worst part, was fucking jonesing for a cigarette. Yeah. But, I'm glad it happened in hindsight. But when it's happening, it was torture.
Oh, yeah. And then it's kind of like then Opie and Anthony's like, oh, this guy's like willing to do a man on the street bit.
Sure.
And he's goes to jail. And then so once you started, it's interesting because I remember when this happened, because I was like listening to talk radio and stuff, and back, and you've always heard like once I got in the industry, like all these like instances of people getting kicked off the air for like bits that went wrong or whatever.
Yeah, well, there wasn't one bigger than the church, the Sex and the Church deal.
Well, I'll tell you, the Sex for Sam, which was it was a sponsored event. I mean, it was a sponsored event by Sam Adams Beer and the company. They knew what we were doing, and it was the third year they had done it. But I didn't go in the field this time, quote unquote, because of my arrest. I said I will fucking never go out and do that dumb shit again. So I was in studio, and looking back, I'm glad I was in studio because I went down with the ship with Opie and Anthony, but I was not ostracized from the show. Like Paul Mercurio, I think, kind of got unfair treatment because he was the guy with the couple who got arrested for having anal in St. Patrick's Cathedral. And we weren't thinking of anything sacrilege. You were just thinking, it's a crazy thing to do.
Yeah.
But then people talk about, there were 9/11 services held there at one point. And, like, you're not thinking of that when you're doing that. You're just being a fucking asshole on the radio. So thank God I wasn't out when that happened because I didn't get arrested. I was in the studio with Opie and Anthony.
How could they even prove, like, because I've listened from doing a lot of radio.
Let me see your dick.
There was a lot.
All right.
There was
Lock them up.
Like when
I don't know how that works.
When I started in radio back in 2003, 4, whatever, I used to do a lot of man on the street bits, and I used to fake a lot of them because it's radio, like theater of the mind.
That's the difference between you two. Doesn't fake it. You're a fucking fraud.
I know.
You were smart.
Yeah.
Well, I like one time
he would literally go down the hall into a production bay and then get like sound effects CDs and just like sit in there and pretend he was on a boat.
I said I was riding a train one time, and I was supposed to jump off into water.
A biplane. You did a biplane.
Yeah. There's a lot of fake shit that I just realized. I was like, oh, just fake it. Who knows?
Balloon.
It's pre-social media, pre-internet. Like, you could do whatever you wanted.
You had a fascination with vehicles.
Yeah.
Trains and balloons and planes. And
so was it just like...
That's true.
Were they even able to prove these people actually had sex in them? And they could have faked it, right?
Well, they had a security guard that saw them. And he knew what they were doing. So I don't think they could prove anal, but they proved sex. I mean, the penalty for anal wasn't worse.
I know, yeah, right. Yeah.
Be better,
Yeah, actually, in that room, yeah. But they wound up, Paul kind of went back and complained that he got arrested. So when they saw him as a member of the show who got arrested, which he wasn't, he was just a guest comedian, it made it worse for us. And, of course, the company isn't going to take the beating. But you know what? I think the Ken Stevens are... the fucking PD got fired, and Jeremy, who worked for us at the time, who's now runs Howard's stuff over at Sirius, he's been there for many years.
Yeah.
I think he might have got fired. I'm not sure if he lasted or not. I know Ken got fired. Or they made him retire, whatever it was. So everybody kind of went down for that, and they changed formats. It was a fucking nightmare. The whole station blew up after that.
I remember kind of I likened it a little bit to the old Janet Jackson's Titgate.
Yeah, 2003.
Yeah. That happened in 2003 because I started interning on the Monsters in the morning or in the midday back then, and then Howard Stern was the lead into that show. And then after the Janet Jackson's titty thing happened,
they just put us up.
And Howard then left, and historically the morning show took over, or Monster took over the morning. But it's crazy. And Jim, I wanted to just reminisce about this. It's like what you could get away with, and obviously like that was one step too far, but. Back in the early 2000s, what terrestrial radio could get away with is insane compared to what it is now. And it's weird that we actually devolved when it comes to terrestrial radio. But you used to, I think it was because of pre-internet and social media, I mean, there was shit that, like, it would blow your mind that you were able to say it. Like, basically, you couldn't curse, and that was about it. Like, everything else was on the table, and then, and no one really knew what was too far, and then people just found out by getting fired. It's like, oh, sex in church, too far, fired.
You would just get a fine. You'd get an LOI, from the FCC, and the next thing you know, you're getting a fine.
You're getting a fine, but then what happened was that the fines went tenfold after that.
Yeah.
And when they went tenfold after that, that's when the companies fucking panicked, and they said it was going to be per offense, which meant if you were syndicated to 17 states, instead of $35,000 fine, it was $350,000 fine.
Yeah.
350,000 times 17 stations. So that was how they cracked down on these fucking radio stations. But yeah, back then you could use letters. Like, you know what I mean? I was on a date, I stuck my C in her A. Then you couldn't do that. And then you could, veil words. What happened? I splooged in her hole. Well, he didn't curse.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
But then we came back on in 2004, and around 2006, Opie and Anthony were doing double duty. We were doing 3 hours on K-Rock and XM, which the XM listeners wanted to cut our throats because we were clean. And then the final 2 hours was just XM. I hated those days because it sucked because the first 3 hours had to be fucking radio clean, commercials, it stunk. But I remember Louis would always come on, and Louis could never get the rules down. So he thought it was okay if he goes, yes, I diarrheaed her mouth. He would get dumped. Louis got dumped more than anybody. Because like, Louis, you can't say that. Even though you're not saying shit, you can't say it's an excrement. It's a bodily fluid in the mouth. You can't say it.
Like diarrhea.
Oh, boy. Louis loves a diarrhea in the mouth comment.
And it's funny explaining to people what, back in the day in the terrestrial radio rules, you're like, you could say you're an asshole, but you can't say this person's asshole, and then they're like,
I remember trying to explain this to my mom.
Yeah,
and I'm like, you know what? I'm just not going to do this anymore. And I'm just gonna let you just we'll figure it out.
Yeah, just wonder.
And then it was like, then I remember like the company was like, okay, no more sexual content after the Janet Jackson's
lean on racism.
Thing. Yeah, they're like lean on racial stuff. Yeah. Like they literally told us that. Like I was an intern at the time, but they're like, go heavy on racist.
You mean in our non-existent sensitivity training?
Yeah. And it was fucking bizarre. Like the whole shit is bizarre. I wish they got to make a documentary one day about all this fucking this radio time, because
I'm sure somebody's doing it.
We're about to kind of see the end of like the terrestrial radio talk show era.
Well, the golden age of podcasts is, at least that's what they're claiming right now.
Sure.
Any publication is saying golden age of podcasts, but like you are in this, with your new show. What's not even new now, but
with Sam,
the show you do with Sam. That and congrats on that, because it's awesome.
You.
It's a great show.
I love doing it, man. Thank you. It's really fun.
It's really good because you guys, it's not just super funny, but there's also, like the Roger Stone interview. Like,
Roger comes on all the time. He hasn't. It's just the judge gave him a hard time.
You got the last one.
Yeah, before he went, he got locked up. Yeah, Roger loves our show. He would come. We have a crazy variety of guests.
Yeah, when I'm like, the more I read about them, I'm like, oh, he's a regular. I'm like, that's nuts, because that guy, like, I don't even know what I think about that guy.
I know, he's an interesting character, and he's a fun guest to have on the show.
And the glasses make it weirder.
Yeah.
The tiny, like, I don't know, he's like a walking middle finger.
Yeah, he's
a weird dude.
A weird guy, but he's fun to talk to. And we enjoy him having. Look, I don't care what a guy's.
He's unfiltered,
right? He's unfiltered,
yeah.
man.
Yeah. It's a perfect, podcast talk radio guest to have, because like, it's so polarizing.
Oh, yeah.
And
it doesn't even matter what side he's on, because it's just he's like.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
it's a character. Yeah.
Like, people ask us that all the time, because I think most people know that we're pretty. I guess, well, not fiscally. We're very conservative. But, for the most part, we're pretty liberal guys. Sure. But, like, we'll talk to anybody, because I don't do the politics thing.
No, not at all.
But when you guys have him in, he'll just give you an opinion on anything, right?
I would have Goebbels in if he wanted to come on and do an interview. What do I care?
Exactly.
Come on the show.
Exactly.
I saved a lot of our old dump sheets, too. I have a lot of them from, like, 2007. A lot of we would get a dump sheet at the end of the day about what they dropped out.
Yep.
And it's so silly, some of the stuff that they would
We were supposed to write those. I wouldn't fill them out.
Yeah, I guess our producer would do it.
I was the producer. We'd have a dump sheet. I'd like dump things all the time, and then like I just write like maybe one thing. I'm like, I'm not gonna do that. Stupid.
And going kind of back to what's your take on what will be the future of terrestrial radio as it is now? Because obviously, like, iHeart last year, they had to file bankruptcy and stuff like that because the ad revenue is not where it was, and so the internet has opened up so many avenues to advertise. It's like taking away a lot of money, and they're forced to do things different, and AM FM signals are kind of being taken over by Wi-Fi. It's like once you're on the internet, you're syndicated worldwide instantly. So it's kind of like taking away that syndication model that used to be in terrestrial radio. Like, what is your take on that? I mean, you've kind of evolved towards podcasting and Sirius and stuff like that. And
you're not shackled by ratings, right?
No, we're heard everywhere in the U.S. and everywhere in Canada. And you can get that on demand whenever you want. And there's a podcast that goes up with the content.
Yeah.
So it's like I feel like we get out there. I don't know where it's going, but it is fun to watch regular TV and regular radio take it in the ass because they were such fucking dicks. They were such fucking dopes about it. Because there's so many guys who weren't good enough to be on the air that are in those businesses that kind of make the decisions. And it's like, you stupid motherfucker, you didn't see this coming. And it's great that you didn't see it coming because you're a dope. So I'm kind of happy. I mean, look, terrestrial radio has been great to me. I do it on the road all the time. But a lot of the guys making those decisions, they should have embraced it. They should have embraced podcasting. They should have embraced it and somehow ran it on their thing. So you take away a little bit of the, instead of going after you guys, they should have fucking played it on the station a little bit so they'd get a little bit of that bump. It would have been smarter.
Get in front of the parade
Yes,
or whatever.
get in front of it.
Well, what's funny, too, is that, and I get emails from people that are like, oh, man, you're really hard on radio. You're a dick to it, And I'm like, yeah, because I love it so much.
Sure.
And I saw what it was, and then I saw what it became.
How they emasculated it. They never sided with the talent. Imus getting fired was like really the fucking death knell. JV and Elvis getting in trouble for an Asian joke, even though he was married to an Asian woman. Like, not being able to look at special interest groups and going, fucking shut up. Stop it. That's why Fox is good, whether you like the politics or not, because they stood by Hannity, they stood by Laura Ingraham. They're probably going to stand by Tucker Carlson, which they should. Anyone who will stand by their talent in the face of fucking advertiser bullshit is a good place.
Yeah, you're right. It is crazy that
I didn't even think about that with the Tucker deal, but you're right. They probably will.
They should too, because he didn't do anything crazy. That's 10 years ago. They hired him after that stuff.
Yeah.
So what?
Yeah, it is crazy that one complaint, and the whole system is set up in terrestrial radio for one complaint to change the face of the content that people are trying to create, and that's what it happens. It's like, one FCC complaint could make the business change the radio show's content and stuff, and you're like, what? Like, why? Like, I have thousands of listeners didn't complain. One crazy person complains, and now you're telling me to change my content? That's ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. And like, same thing that happened to us, and we're telling Jim kind of the story, but like one fake lady complaint made them say, "Oh, you got to shut down your podcast." You're like, "What the fuck?" Like this.
Well, it could have gone horribly wrong. It changed our lives forever, and it went
for the better.
Well.
Yeah,
it went well, but it didn't have to go.
Sure,
we didn't know it was going to work.
In what other instance? In what other company? Like, in McDonald's, someone's like, "I don't like Big Mac. Change the sauce," and they're like, "Oh shit!" One person said it. Change it all. Like, that's insane in that realm. But that's what happened in terrestrial radio and happened for years.
If the complaint is right. Like that old lady spilled coffee in her twat in McDonald's and burned herself, and didn't they change the temperature and they had to do all this stuff because of the lawsuit? Yeah. So if they think there's going to be some kind of like a legal problem, those companies
well, the
fucking
warnings.
panic.
I remember when the cups were like there were more words on it than a Bible. It was just like all these warnings just swirling around the cup.
Yeah, one old lady doesn't know not to dump it on her clit, and the rest of us have to fucking have to read that.
Hey, you're right.
Maybe it helped her. She's like, ooh, like that. Oh, it woke it back up again.
Jim, how'd you become so close with the Osbourne family?
I was such an Ozzy fucking fanatic.
Like as a kid? Like
I used to call Jet Records in 1981 when he was when Diver Madman and Blizzard of Oz, I believe, were put out on Jet Records originally. I would call Jet Records in England and just say, "Can I meet Ozzy?" I was obsessed with Ozzy and Sabbath, and I became close to him because I've interviewed Ozzy a few times, and he liked me. And then I finally interviewed Sharon. And I give Opie credit for this too, because Opie was saying to me, he goes, "This guy, no one is a bigger fan of your husband than this guy. And if anybody fucks with Ozzy on the air, they have to deal with it. Like I wouldn't let anybody badmouth Ozzy." And Sharon was like, "Oh, God bless you." She was so nice about it. And then I think that she gave me an Ozzy interview when something was coming up. So I interviewed him, and she loved the fact that I never fucked with him. I never tried to make him look bad. And I think they just knew I was genuine. I didn't want anything from them. And then, you know, I interviewed him. Then I would have an hour alone with him. And then I got to, you know, go to gigs with him in his car. I went with
nuts.
Dude. I went with Ozzy in the car when he was with Sabbath. I just talked to him for an hour in the car, going to see Sabbath. And I've been to his house. And when 13 came out, I was the guy they asked to interview the band, even though Bill wasn't there. I got to interview Ozzy, Geezer, Tony, and Brad Wilk at the premiere.
And what did you think of it? I thought it was great.
Dude, there's nothing. Literally, if I would have walked out and Oswald would have killed me, it would have been worth it. I would have been fucking happy. It's the greatest thing I've ever done in my life.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
man.
but I don't abuse it. Like, I don't want anything from him. You know, I love the guy.
Yeah,
I love his family.
That's enough for you.
Yeah, man. Like, it's funny. I saw them. I interviewed Sharon. This is probably about a year ago. And Ozzy he didn't do the interview, but he was with her. And I talked to him after. He's like, come by the house. He invited me to his house. And it was probably just a polite thing, but I took it up. I'm like, okay, Oz. And I fucking came over. And they had me host a podcast. It was so weird. Like, I thought it was like all friendly, but like they had me work for free. And I sat down and they're like, we'd like you to host this. And I had no preparation. But that's where all that radio shit comes in. Like, you're so fucking nervous that you're going to blow it, that you're actually not nervous anymore.
Sure.
You're so panicky that it works.
Yeah, that's true.
And then it's like from so many reps, and you know from like it's the same as stand up, I imagine.
Well, like I look at your career,
talk radio, you just have so much reps that you could do more. Just sit down and get on a mic and have a conversation.
Young.
Yeah, you'll find it somewhere.
Yeah.
And you're young though, man. Like
I'm 50. I wish.
But looking at what you've done to 50, that's a lot.
Thank you. Yeah,
That's a lot of broadcasting, a lot of comedy, a lot of writing, a lot of stand. You know what I mean? Like that's a lot of performing.
Safe to say, the peak was 200007. So we're kind of on the down.
Dude, everybody's got to come in for a landing. We're there too.
I'm landing. I'm Ethiopian Airlines.
Well, hold on. Let's jump because that's bullshit, Jim. Because you're about to be in a Martin Scorsese movie.
Yes.
And
can we talk about that at all? Like,
sure. I knock wood because I don't want to get cut out of it.
Yeah. But you're playing Don Rickles. How could you be cut out of it?
Well, it was the scene is. I mean, I don't know how it's with. The way I got
Are we jinxing it? Are we not
No,
supposed to talk about
not
this?
at all, not at all.
Because when I read that, I go, holy shit, one of my favorite comedians is playing one of my favorite comedians.
It was amazing. I've met Rickles a couple times. I did the Tonight Show with him. He was never a huge influence for me. I was a Richard Pryor fan, you know. And I did a thing where at the end, like Jay would throw to the news, and all the guests of the show would stand there. So I knew my manager was filming it, so I was standing next to Don, and I kind of stood like him and kind of slumped down like him. And we did have a very similar look, and we talked kind of similar. So they were casting this movie, and my manager had talked to them, and apparently they sent Scorsese my special. I didn't know any of this was happening. He didn't even audition me for it. They sent him like that video of me and Rickles standing next to each other and me talking, and they said, yeah, you got the part. You have 10 days to get ready, which was all I had. So I went in, I met with Scorsese, which was, Is
that insane?
Yeah, but I was into depression at the time. You know, I was in a very, very a horrible place mentally. Like I was really, really depressed. Like worse than I've ever been.
Do you struggle with that stuff?
Yeah, up and down.
Yeah,
I spike, you know what I mean? Anywhere from just feeling like I'm king of the world to wanting to brush my teeth with a shotgun. You know,
yeah.
It goes back and forth.
Yeah, I can relate.
I was in one of those modes, and then I wasn't nervous. So I sat down with Scorsese, had a great chat about comedy, but I felt like I was just talking to you guys. I was just comfortable because it was comedy. And if I was talking to him about acting, I would have fucking panicked and babbled. Mm-hmm. But because it was comedy, I was comfortable.
Yeah.
So they put me in makeup, and I went in to the Gotham Comedy Club. But it was a script. It wasn't like I was just riffing Rickles shit. And I walk in the room, and Scorsese is standing there talking to De Niro and Pesci because they were both in the scene. They were both in the scene. I had to do some Rickles lines, and then I had to pause because I knew Joe and De Niro had lines, and then I had to go back and do it. And then I have Sebastian Maniscalco, who's apparently very good in the film. He played a mobster, and then I have an interaction with him, which is why I'm in the movie, because that scene actually happened. So I'll probably be very, very peripheral and in the background. I don't think they'll focus on me much. I'll just be there for a second, you know what I mean, a little bit. But whatever it is, I don't care.
No, it's huge. This is like the more I read about it, this is like Scorsese's like baby pet project. Like this is the thing that he's been wanting to do for years and years and years and years and years. You know, I mean,
I was so amazed to be. I just want to be in it, even if it's for 20 seconds, because it's a Martin Scorsese film with a couple of my favorite people. I mean, it's fucking. It's literally Raging Bull.
That's what Lunel. That's what Lunel does. Lunel comes in and she'll do like a. She'll be like in Borat or Star is Born.
Yeah,
she'll just come in and do like a little piece in a mega hit, and then it just just fuels her on down the tracks.
Working with somebody you respect so much. And I did get a picture with Scorsese. I had to on the end. I got my I snapped a selfie. I didn't care how it looked. It was just
of course.
And what a nice guy too, man. Like a guy who was on that level. He made everybody feel relaxed and comfortable. He was so fucking great. And I have done stuff with a little bit of stuff with De Niro before, so I was comfortable with him because I did a little piece in The Comedian, and then he did the opening of my Netflix special.
Yeah, I was gonna say, he was the opening, and that was like
2017. I got Louis and him and Gervais to all do it. Like Gervais started it, and I jumped in this quick thing with Louis, and then De Niro was like the big surprise at the end. And he spanked my bare ass.
Yeah.
But I didn't put that in the script because I was afraid that they would... I had done something in The Comedian with him, so I knew he liked me and his people. So I sent them the script, and I couldn't believe I got the email. They said, Bob would love to do this. So I was like, really? Holy shit. So he approved the script, and the night before he called me, and he goes, I feel like it's a little mean. I want to make sure that they know I like you. I'm like, yeah, no problem. We'll make sure. So the next day I get there, and he and I are talking over, and I go, look, I mean, there's a thing where you might spank me. I'm like, but I got you a hairbrush, so you don't have to touch my bare ass. And he's laughed. He's like, I don't care. And I'm like, all right, fucking remember you said that. Because I fucking dropped my pants and laid right over his lap. But he has such great instincts. We did 3 takes over his lap, and then he finally goes, let's do one where we're standing. Again, he got tired of me jizzing on his leg. But that was the one we finally used. He had such good instincts. And he's slapping me a lot in it. And in the first one, he did the take, and I told him, like, he looked at the script, but he wasn't. We had to write it out for him.
Yeah.
Because it was supposed to be sloppy, like he wasn't prepared. And then I correct him, and he slapped me, and he was doing like a miss on purpose. And I'm like, no, I really want you to hit me. And he goes, you sure? And he works out every day. That cocksucker is strong. Dude, he fucking cracked me. If you watch it, because we shoot it out of order.
Yeah.
Like at the end, I'm sitting there, and my face... It looks like I've taken a paddle to the side of the face.
Yeah.
He has a big fucking hand, and he hits hard. So he spanked my face harder than my ass. It was such a surreal experience to have, and it was my dream to have him introduce me, and he did.
And you were like working with Netflix before the mega Netflix comedian boom.
Well, that's how it always is. I'm always there right before it happens. I'm like fucking like Lucky Louie I was on.
Yeah,
but then
you were a regular on that, right?
Every episode, but then the Louie, the show, is the one that goes through the roof. Anything I touch dies on the vine, and as soon as they remove me like a tumor, it flowers, it blossoms and flourishes.
Well,
so fucked up.
Oh, I am such shit.
No, because I remember thinking, oh wow, it's like Jim Norton's. He's got the special on Netflix. I was like, oh shit, that's cool. But there weren't a ton of them. Now it's like you go there and you just search comedy, and there's like 150 different.
Well, I had a bunch on there that got pulled. What happened was I had 2 on there or 3, but they were Viacom owned. So Viacom would have them, and they would go to Netflix. They came off right before Netflix exploded, and then I did one pure Netflix one. The one like Mouthful of Shame was a Netflix one. I came between Louis and Amy, I think. So it was between 2 giant specials.
That's awesome.
But the other 2 I had on were owned by Viacom. I think I own both of them now. They're dated, but I'm going to try to get them back on Netflix. Just so if you search me, there's a couple of older specials there.
Sure.
But it sucked. They came off right before the boom because Viacom saw it coming and they pulled all their content off of Netflix.
Wow.
Which sucked.
Or
most of their comedy content.
You've been involved, and we talk about this all the time with, mainstream terrestrial radio and then Sirius XM and you podcasting, and you've seen kind of the whole industry change. What is now like the stereotypical path that a comedian takes to get their stuff out there? Because it's not the same path there was 20 years ago, right. And now there's so much content providers and ways to get your stuff seen, rather than having to get a sitcom deal or whatever, or they tour around until you get a sitcom deal. Like, what's the biggest change you've seen now that was 20 years ago?
No one source draws as well as it used to. Like you said, it's a bunch of shit. You got to do podcasts. You got to, because terrestrial doesn't sell the room out like it used to. Podcasts won't, again, if you're doing Rogan, that helps a lot. Corolla will help a lot because they're massive. But you have to do a bunch of different stuff. So comedians also, Tom Papa used this phrase to me, and he was smart. He goes, this generation doesn't ask for permission. They just shoot shit. They're really smart. A lot of these younger guys just shoot stuff and put it up. And if it goes, it goes. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Like Chris Stefano and Giannis Pappas have this show they were doing called Brooklyn Boys, I think it was called. I might be saying the name wrong, but they just did it. They didn't give a fuck, and then Comedy Central sees it and it's starting to grow. You know what I mean? Because they weren't going to wait for someone to tell them it was okay.
Yeah,
and that's what a lot of those guys are doing. They're really smart guys. They're just doing this stuff. So I think that's the path that they're taking. Everyone's doing each other's podcasts. Everyone's talking. So it dilutes the effect, again, unless you do Joe's show or Adam's. If you do something like that, it helps on a national or international scale. But the top couple, where I did, Bill's show, Burr's show helps a lot too.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying your show doesn't help, but you know what I'm saying.
No, yeah, of course, yeah.
Well, I'm virtually certain it doesn't. I feel. I mean, this isn't even on.
Well,
but you know what I'm saying. Like it's those top 3 or 4 shows still stand out.
Sure.
The way a giant rate, like the way Howard would have.
Oh, it's even harder for us being. When we started in 2009. I mean, it's harder for us now.
There was a lot less podcasts.
We were one of the only comedy podcasts even in Orlando.
Right.
And then now, if you were to say how many comedy, like Orlando, I don't know if you know this, but Orlando, in my opinion, is one of the bigger cities as far as podcasts go.
I did not know
the
that.
podcast community in Orlando is like ridiculously tight, and there are a lot of really good shows. Like Samantha's got a really good show. Her show Semantics is awesome, and there's these little comedy shows that are all over the place that are really, really, really good. But my point being that when we started, I thought our the amount of people that were grabbing the show was huge. Yeah. Now I'm not saying it's less. It's just it's seemingly spread out more. We have some people that are catching us on
content,
Twitch. Some people are catching us on YouTube, like you said. It's like
everywhere.
You have to kind of do every little thing to try and get what you used to get in one spot.
And you're fighting for the draw too, because again, you're fighting guys on YouTube who can sell out a theater. And I'm not even, a lot of people I don't knock any of it, man. Like, hey, if you can hold people's interest for that long and go in front of an audience, fucking good for you. Guys on YouTube, I respect the guys that have these giant YouTube channels because you're not relying on some fucking stupid network to tell you what to do. You're going on there and just doing whatever you do. Oh, look at that. He juggles dildos. Good for him. He's famous.
You're one of one comedian that I think we've had in here that's like cool with that. Most of the older guys that we get in here, and I wouldn't put you in that category. It's for some reason I'm just not getting old guy energy off of you. But the older guys that we get in here get pissed.
Well, they just
when you get like a PewDiePie or somebody that's over at the Improv and he's like doing 7 shows sold out with VIP and all this kind of stuff, and then you see these guys get real bitter about it.
PewDiePie's probably making 15 or 20 million a year doing YouTube too. So PewDiePie earned it, man. I don't give a fuck what people. He's internationally famous from doing that, and he's doing content that's his. And what's more? Why is stand-up more legit? Why is it more legit if some fucking dummy greenlights it on a network and a bunch of cornballs write it? All right, wacky neighbor. How is that legitimate stardom?
You're right.
But this guy just fucking popping a mic on and talking, and people going, "Wow, that's great." I don't know. To me, that's even more legit because you're cutting out the fucking stupid middleman.
100%. And Jim, you'll I'm sure you know about this, but iHeart just recently, it's funny because they're
playing catch up. So you're seeing.
Well, they recently bought the second biggest podcast network in the world, that How Things Work network, and then now I'm sure you heard about the Ron Burgundy podcast and stuff. They're promoting that hard, and I laugh only because these are the same people that once told us, back in 2010 or whatever,
because of podcasting, and now podcasting's cool to them.
They're like, you're not you're going to be a bug man. You're leave to do a podcast. What is that? We're terrestrial radio. We're the real shit. And then now they're telling me, sitting in that couch, telling me
all the salespeople pulled us aside and said, "You're sure you want to do this? Have you thought about your family?" I'm like, "Fuck you. Have I thought about my family? It's my family."
But they're like now they're like, "Oh, podcast is a new thing. We bought the biggest podcast network and we're pumping content out." But I'm laughing because they have no idea what they the reason people liked podcasts to begin with, and that shows because they're trying to promote this Ron Burgundy podcast, and nothing against Will Ferrell and stuff, but I am like that. You're kind of missing the point of why people liked podcasts. It's kind of the same way why people like terrestrial radio. It's just like the open forum of people talking and stuff, and then they like podcasts because it's real and it was just conversations and it and it was uncensored and stuff. Not a character that you think, oh, everybody loves Ron Burgundy, let's just have him talk for an hour. And it's like, nah, you missed the whole point. And paying Will Ferrell millions of dollars to do this podcast is kind of, you're missing the point of why this even became popular to begin with. And now their whole mandate is making their terrestrial radio shows do podcasts and flood the market with podcasts. And it's like, oh god,
but they're so stupid. They wrecked everything.
It's not podcasting. Like, they're taking shows. They're like, if you do a music show in like Dubuque and you do, you know, like let's say you're interviewing some local band, you'll take that segment and then you'll put an intro on it and an outro, and then you'll just MP3 it and then upload it and say that's a podcast. That's not a podcast.
No, it's not.
It's a replay of what you already did that nobody fucking cares about.
Right, and they're not going to care about it now just because you get it everywhere. Nobody's going to want it anywhere else.
Right.
You know, I love that. I knew Jim would be like, oh, he knew.
Well, how long have you been with Sirius now? I mean, that's a long time, right?
Well, they called it a merger, but it was like saying Germany merged with Poland. It was a fucking hostile takeover. They kicked their shit out of XM.
I was an XM guy.
Oh, you
so
are?
I was like trying to be like, oh, XM's better than Sirius. My wife was a Sirius. You know, she had Sirius. So when the whole thing happened, eventually, I just had my Sirius.
We're Sirius XM. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they did merge, but I mean, I guess it's 2007 or 8, whenever it happened. I don't remember. At least 10 years I wanted. Oh, wait. 2008, I believe. Or no, 11. Sorry, 2011. Or 8. My who fucking cares? My memory stinks.
But I mean, it seems like I was watching a clip of you and Bill Burr on your show with Sam, and I was like, this is really cool. Like the setup's good. It's laid back. It's very podcast.
Yeah. Because
it's laid back, and I like the way he came in. Like I don't know if you have watched it, but like I really enjoyed how like, oh, here's our guest, and like everything's already started, and he just kind of wanders in and
just walk in, man.
Yeah, I love it. It's very it was very, very fun to watch, and that's got to be fun for you because
great.
Yeah, it's just laid back and cool.
Yeah,
plus it's in New York, right? I mean, like
we're on 49th and 60th. It's a great location.
That's awesome.
A lot of cool people come through the building. You know, we get a lot of. We had, like Gervais loves our show. He does our show a lot. I think he only does us. So he'll come on, do an hour,
What's
an
he
hour
doing
and 15.
now?
He just had this great show on Netflix come out called After Life. It's really good. It's about his wife dies of cancer, and he's trying to struggle with being suicidal. It's really funny and it's really depressing. It's a great show. So he came in and plugged that. We get really interesting guests, and guys like Mark Norman, who's like a fucking mean, funny New York comic, will come on, and we just get really, really funny people on the show. I love doing the show with Sam.
Jim, do you think, I've been saying this for a while, I was like, man, audiences are so segmented now because there's just so much content, and I'm like wondering what that means for the future, but we're kind of seeing that we're because there's so much content and because there's so many avenues to get content, like the audiences are smaller. Like, you know, like back in the old school radio days of like Opie and Anthony, and like when you were on terrestrial
the shares you must have been pulling.
There was huge, and like everything's huge.
Over a 20 share in Cleveland in the afternoon. I remember.
That's fucking. You'll never see that again.
It was massive.
Yeah, right.
Ever again.
And so I've been telling people, I was like, there won't ever be this Howard Stern or anything like that everybody's
like the Stones and the Beatles selling records at the time. It'll never happen again.
And so, and like you're right in as far as there are big shows, the Rogans, the Corollas that have big audiences, but even that is becoming more and more segmented down where there's if you're into Ozzy Osbourne, there's probably 5 podcasts about Ozzy Osbourne's life, and you could just all you can listen to is about Ozzy Osbourne. Like he
makes fun of me because I listen to podcasts about podcasting.
Do you?
There's 10 of them.
Just to keep up on like gear and like changes in Apple Podcasts and Google, because they're fucking with things.
I heard that. Yeah,
they'll change things. They'll be like, no, your album cover, the artwork for 14 by 14. No, we want 3,000 by 3,000. We want it bigger.
Yeah.
If you want to be featured. No, do you know what LUFs are? How are your LUFs? They need to be -14 LUFs. Stuff like that. Stupid shit.
I've never listened to a full podcast. Never.
That's really
never.
That's kind of cool.
To one. People are like, you're on road. You listen. I'm like, no. I love you. I don't listen to myself.
I'll watch 5-hour podcasts.
Yeah, but he's starting to get on like CNN and stuff, like with Elon Musk, and the things he's saying are breaking into mainstream news. And that's why he's so doing so well. But yeah, I don't watch anything I'm on. I can't listen to anything in the car because it's either going to be so bad it makes me angry or so good I'm jealous. I just don't want to know.
Really?
I don't want to know.
So what entertains you? What do you listen to or watch?
Sabbath.
Just
put on the Sabbath
man, music.
and ride.
I listen to music. I mean, that's it. I don't want to. I mean, I watch stuff like I watch documentaries and shit like that, or I'll watch the fucking Game of Thrones. I mean, I'm entertained by stuff. I just don't listen to podcasts. I don't think I do. Do I? No.
Yeah. And then, Jim, I know one question we ask everybody. Every comedian that comes in here, they all have a story about
He's probably got too many.
Some gig that they did for money that is, either your agent or your manager's like, hey, this rich person is a big fan. They want you to come do a private stand-up comedy show in their
it's
house.
Early on before you start making your own rules
or a
and
corporate
picking and choosing
gig.
things because you want the money. You know? I mean, we've all done that.
And then you end up going and doing stand-up in a weird scenario, like in some guy's mansion or at like a dinner party or at a weird corporate gig and stuff. You take the money, but it's a bizarre scenario you're doing stand-up in. And I was wondering if you had any of those stories.
Never a fan of mine, anything like that. I wish I had more famous fans. I don't. And the money is not impressive, but I remember I was very early on. They asked me to do the audience warm-up for an infomercial. And it was called the Home Right Paint Stick. And you would filter paint in, and you could paint the ceiling, and the paint would keep coming. And it was a 6-hour gig, and it paid like $600. And back then, that was all the money in the world.
Yeah.
I bombed so fucking terribly for 6 hours. But the audience was nice, but they just felt sorry for me. Because they were in like bleachers, and I was standing there, and they would shoot, and then they would say, go out there and entertain them, but I was dirty. And I was bombing so bad that after a while, the audience started asking me questions. I'll never, one guy's like, so where are you from? What are you going to do? And I was just talking, having a conversation. That was one of the worst ever because it was so humiliating because they were so nice.
I found the shit.
The Home Right Paint Stick.
Yeah, here it is. Here's a little.
Don't let your next painting project get you down.
Jan was the guy.
Home Right Painting System.
The ad says you can paint a small room in just minutes by using this paint stick along with a specially designed lid.
Place the paint stick on the filter.
And some woman.
Back on the handle.
Oh, this is fucking terrible.
I kinda want that.
I'm so sorry. You win.
I was on that set. Yeah, the Home Right Paint Stick. Shove this up the comedian's asshole.
I like how people are like, oh, he's a stand-up comedian. They're like, in any scenario, he'll make everyone laugh. They're like, no, that's not how it works.
Yeah, comedy's a weird thing, man. It doesn't, like, I love this more than I think I love stand-up very much. But after just being, it's so alive, talking, it's so, radio makes it very hard to enjoy anything as much because you have no idea. It's different every day.
Yes, yeah.
It's off the cuff every day.
How do you write, like, your bits for comedy?
On stage at the Cellar. I go on at the Cellar and just, like, the Bundy documentary I watched, so I just walk down and start talking about that and then start talking about, Abducted in Plain Sight, just see where it goes. The disadvantage to that is that sometimes you find, like, a 3-minute hunk and then you just do that, as opposed to exploring more, whereas writing, I would explore more. So I want to write more for that, but I know I just kind of work it out freestyle, and it's almost like you're just kind of grabbing it, and it just kind of pieces together somehow. But that's a little lazy, and I got to stop doing that. Or combine it with the writing.
Did you get into doing the UFC podcast because you're a big fan of UFC? How did that happen?
Well, I was friends with Dana, too. I was a big fan,
Okay.
And Dana White said to me many years ago, someday you and I are going to work together. And I'm like, oh, okay. And we didn't. And then one day he just called me. And he goes, hey, man, we're doing a podcast, the UFC, with Matt Serra. You want to do it? That's how it happened. That's how Dana works. Here's the money. You want to do it? I'm like, okay.
It's like the Ozzy thing again. It's like people just invite you over to host
just
things.
invite me over to host things.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it's like. Although Dana would never let me into his house. I've never been in fucking Dana's house.
But what a
and it
great
annoys me.
reputation to have. It's like, well, who can we get? He's like, oh, Jim Norton. He'll do it.
He's available.
But also, it's funny. But on the serious side, people probably go like, oh, well, he's respected in the radio area. Like he knows his way around a microphone and a set of headphones. You know, like he's not going to fuck it up.
And Dana, I think, likes me comedically. Like he's got that mentality. And he just thought that me and Matt would be very funny together. And I have a great time with Matt. And so when I talked to my agent, we had to get permission from Sirius to do it, make sure it was okay because I was under contract.
Yeah,
but I told my agent, don't be greedy, don't fuck with them, and it was just real easy to get done. So, I do it twice a week with Matt Serra, who's a fucking psychopath. It's really fun, man.
Yeah, no, I know.
And you do Monday through Thursday with...
Monday through Thursday. We tape UFC on Monday and Wednesday, and I tape Chip on Wednesday night. So every day has like these weird spikes of time that I have for free. Normally Thursday I'll fly. Like I flew into Orlando last night, and I'm doing you guys this morning. And I got the Improv tonight and tomorrow, and then Sunday I'll go home, and then Monday start it over again.
You gonna have any time to do anything while you're here? Or?
No, I don't really do anything. I have slept for like 2 hours last night. I'm extremely tired.
Yeah.
So I'll probably crash for a few hours if I can, and then just do my shows.
Well, Jim, we really appreciate you coming in.
We were
Thanks
so
happy
to have
man.
you.
Of course, thank you.
If you're in town again, please pop by.
I'd love to.
Did Charette bother you a lot this morning?
No.
Okay.
No, he was delightful.
You got to watch this guy.
Yeah, no, he was delightful.
Look at his polo.
It's hideous.
He's only one tiki torch away from hating, from hating every minority.
Yeah.
I can see it in his eyes.
Yeah, he was mumbling. I was like, what do you say? He's not American History X quotes. Nothing.
Favorite movie.
Jim, thanks so much, man.
You guys are great. Thank you.
All right, Twitch. We'll see you on the Friday Free Show later.